to order for the year May 5th, 2022. So welcome everyone. Glad to see you. For those of you that are volunteers to our budget committee, thank you for your volunteerism. We appreciate your service to the community and to the city. And to our elected officials, it's good to see you again as well as our administration and staff. So this is our opportunity. We get to look and review over the budget and ask questions and potentially approve it this evening. So the first, one of the other things I was going to comment, we are televising. So make sure what you're saying tonight. But we are televising it. It's on YouTube. So for those people that want to zoom in or watch on YouTube, they can participate. And we don't need a microphone. Daniel says that he can hear well. And there's video there, and they can see it on the presentation up here. So first action by the budget committee is to elect a chair, and that chairperson has to be from the public, not a city council member. So do I have a nomination?
I nominate.
Go ahead.
Brian Meisner.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilor Harlan and seconded by Anton. Want us to appoint Brian Meisner as the budget chair. All those in favor, say, or do we need to do a roll call?
No.
No. Can we just do an aye?
Yeah.
Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
If it ever appears close, we'll make you count.
Okay. All right. Chairperson Meisner, you want to take over from here? You need an agenda?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's all right. Okay. The first order of business is to elect a secretary, and at this time I'll receive nominations for that position.
Question, is that what you just accept, you just signed for the minutes?
Yes.
Yeah.
I nominate Mr. Wallace.
Yeah. Second.
It has been moved and seconded to put Anton before us as secretary. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Okay. And moving on is to receive the budget message from Mr. Smith.
It's good to see everybody again here. Like the mayor was saying, we can tell it might not be COVID times as much. We're a little closer together. Something has to go wrong. I know. Can you hit the just the switch? All right. So I want to start out saying thank you to all of you, but thank you to the staff, Mark Kay, Tasha, Carol, who did all the work to put the document together, crunch the numbers, department heads for being thoughtful and putting together their budget proposals, and then thanks to you for being here tonight. It's just an interesting graphic, taking a look at all the different things the city does. I think sometimes people forget about the wide variety of different things that we do, from parks and books, meters, pools, all kinds of different things. So to start out with a recap from our last year, here's 4 different pictures of the stages of City Hall. It's been one of the big projects the city's been working on. And I'm sorry to say, the next picture will show that all the pretty green has gone away, but so there you go. And they're really making a lot of progress. I think early next week they'll have all the windows in and really be able to start painting on each floor. They've already started painting in the basement, so it's making good progress. There's the front entryway. And next week, they're planning to pave the parking lot next to City Hall as well. So here's Riverfront Park. This was one of the projects that was completed last year, the new parking lot, and this is where the new playground is going to be. Our staff will be installing it. We actually have it in our possession, so we didn't have to worry about supply chain issues. We were able to buy it last year. So that'll be getting fully completed, but this is a project in conjunction with FEMA, so we were able to utilize some federal dollars to help with that project. And then for those of you maybe that live on the west side of the city might have seen the lake that would form and the river that formed on Southwest 7th every summer, the last few summers. So we hope we have a solution that will keep that out of there. They've now paved all this and it hopefully is completed. But again, this was a stormwater issue that hopefully we got resolved, stormwater and groundwater. So now just an introduction, quick review. We're getting to have a lot of experience on the committee. Maybe I don't need to go through all the review again as much, but there's labeled tabs in the document. There's also page numbers on the bottom middle. We'll be referring to those. And just as an example, or just to remind people, we function in funds in the city, and that's not all of our own choice, but that's kind of how government and public accounting goes. So we use funds. Each of those funds has different characteristics, different sources of revenue, different restrictions on how that revenue can be used. So for example, in the utility fund, although sometimes we get accused of siphoning that money off to do other things, it all really stays in the utility fund, and so we do water and sewer projects with it. That's what happens with all of those monies. We have something we call the reserve fund, which is basically our savings account, and we are able to put money there to save up for future projects. Now, the state of Oregon has some strict local budgeting laws, and we work within those parameters. And one of those that's just a little bit silly is on page 115. It's the Park and Rider Center Construction Fund. We have to keep these funds open for 3 years with no expense before we can close it. This will be the last year. You'll see it in the budget, but we have to do that. So what you're looking at tonight as far as the process is what we call the proposed budget. This is proposed by the budget officer, which is myself, and at this point we're looking for input, feedback on the budget, and modifications could be made tonight. We'd be asking you to approve a budget tonight, which would then go to the city council for adoption, and that would be in early June. So that's the process. So just to try to set a little bit of the stage from the economy side, we're continuing to show a slow, steady growth. We're hitting 1% to 2% a year, and our current population, 19,696, likely we'll get close to the 20,000 mark in the next, with the numbers that will come out at the end of this calendar year. Same pattern in our assessed value. If we take a look at over the last 10 years, that's gone up 47%, so it's grown a little bit quicker than our population. And so we're at $1.1 billion for our assessed value in the city. And just overall, the economy is continuing to be strong. Data centers keep adding buildings. We've had the new warehousing and distribution business that's opening. We're annexing more acreage, and the housing growth continues to go, just slow and steady. Last year, we added 139 new housing units within the city, and a majority of those were single-family dwellings. And here's just to take a look at the various active subdivisions around the city. As you can see, they're really scattered throughout. If you recognize any of the names, one will be breaking a new one. It's kind of broken ground, but they're going to do the official groundbreaking early June, which is Moorhead Apartments. It's on Northwest 11th. And then that's it's a subsidized affordable housing project that's going on there. All right, so now this is our all funds budget. We have a $3 million decrease in that budget this year. Most of it is we've completed a big chunk of City Hall. We completed our South Hermiston Industrial Park project. And so from a capital side, we have less funds scheduled for that, so our overall budget has gone down. Now from the proposed budget that you see tonight, we're proposing 3 new positions. One is in our utility fund or the recycled water department, and then 2 new positions in the police department. And we'll talk a little bit about those as we get further. So some of the basic assumptions that we're using, we try to put this together based on the vision, the values, and the goals of the city. That kind of got updated this year as we went through the Hermiston 2040 process. And so those are a little bit, they're not a lot different, but they got some new language and some new energy in them, I think. What we've put in the budget is a 2% wage increase for all employees, but I do have a note that I have not completed negotiations with the police union. Their contract expires at the end of this fiscal year. Hoping to have it settled before we get to the end of the fiscal year, but I can't guarantee that at this point. We have some new faces on each side of the bargaining table, and it's kind of been a little different. So, sure.
So the wage increase that you've budgeted, what if the police association bargaining is more than that? So are you planning on matching that with the rest of the staff, or how's that going to work?
That I don't know yet on the match part. Just if it were to be a very large increase above the 2, it would be hard to do that across everyone. But whatever, if we need to, we would come back with a supplemental to change the budget depending on what that final settlement is.
Are you bargaining for a 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year contract?
We're shooting for a 3-year contract.
Thank you.
Myron, is that 2% in addition to cost of living increases?
No, that would be the cost of living. And we recognize that's not anywhere close to what, the inflationary numbers are right now, but the slow, steady growth I was showing you, that's how our budget grows. We don't get a big chunk on an inflationary increase. So, and then we've got really our PERS numbers are pretty steady because we're in the 2nd year of the state biennium, and so our rates don't change in this year. So all of the PERS increases are basically only for any raises that might go to employees.
How much is unfunded?
So we have about a $15 million unfunded pension obligation at this point, at the last time it was valued. So our general fund, and this is the fund where we pay for most of the kind of general services, the police department, parks, libraries, the finance administration type expenses come out of the general fund. This has a very slight increase. That $348,000 is just basically the 2 positions and the raises. There's really no other large increases within the general fund. There are some changes that we made just organizationally. So it used to be for a department that we had it was the city manager and the planning together. When we added our new in-house city attorney, what we did is put planning in its own department, and city manager and city attorney, and now in a department we're calling city manager legal. So again, that's a budget that you'll see in there, our legal budget. is really one of those that's going to just sit for 3 years and then go away because we plan to bring those expenses into the city manager legal department. So the police department is on page 50. If you want to turn to that page, we're proposing two new positions. One of them is partially funded by a federal grant and will be designated a community services officer. And the other one will be a patrol position.
Questions, since it's going to be federally funded, are those funds going to run out? And if so...
Yeah, this is a 3-year grant. What we're hoping with the plan is that our budget will grow enough to, as we go over the next 3 years, to absorb that position.
How much is the grant?
It's about 42 or 43,000 a year.
And that was for 3 years?
Right.
Are we gonna get a little bit more detail on what those positions would entail? I'm really interested in the community part. I don't know if that's reserved for this part in the conversation or later.
Well, I don't have a lot necessarily. I'm going to ask the chief to give, what is a community services officer? What is that? What's your vision for the duties of that position?
So we're still looking at that, but in essence, there's a lot of meetings that we've been remiss at for the last several years just due to staffing and Good Shepherd Health and Wellness Coalition. We should have somebody at that meeting. Another liaison specific to mental health right now, it's Captain Travis Ian, and we plan on keeping him there as well, but I envision the community service officer playing a role in that as well. This person likely will also take on some investigative caseload just to help offset. Now, if that's cold cases or what that is exactly, we haven't decided. And then this slipped my mind. There's one other big thing that I just, accreditation. We had to stall accreditation just purely, I just didn't have enough time for it. So I envision this person probably taking that on and being our accreditation manager. We're not forced to be accredited yet. Once you get to 35 sworn officers, the state of Oregon, you will be forced by 2026. And so we're still under that, but I think that train's on the tracks and we need to get out in front of it. So this person will help with that as well.
It's exciting. Thank you.
And the other one is a regular
Yeah, patrol.
officer.
You still think you're understaffed with the adding of 2 people?
Yes, I think, and again, I didn't really talk a lot about it, but we were doing a lot of work to make sure we were balanced, and so we're hoping within another couple of years we have some natural growth in our revenues that will allow us to add another 2, which would give us 1 additional officer per team that we operate on now. So these 2 will be functioning as kind of backups, being able to fill in when people are on vacation, that type of thing, to keep our teams a little bit better staffed, but this won't be a complete fix now.
Yeah, because I heard they had burnout because of being understaffed, so this is a start in the right direction.
Yeah, and the burnout challenge, I think, is probably a combination. COVID, I think, hit
Sure.
our officers pretty hard, just mentally, but also we had a number of people out on injuries that we just couldn't control, and that really hit them altogether. So, all right, Parks and Rec. This starts on page 32. There's a number of different departments that come under Parks and Rec. Again, we're really hopefully getting back to our general operations of these departments. We've seen steady, even some of the areas, exponential growth in participation, a lot of youth sports, have been way above even pre-COVID numbers, so we're seeing a lot of participation in these programs. So, but we still try to be conservative on the revenue side as well as, you know, staffing and so forth on this side. But so pool is on 36, recreation's 42. One of the large capital projects that's still out there is our skate park project. We anticipate that starting right after the beginning of the fiscal year in July with some dirt work. The location is across the street from the police and fire station. We have some grant funding and our match, but we're hopeful. We have an application in for the remainder. That's why we're waiting a little bit longer, so we can see if we get that funding and be able to do the full project.
How much is the grant funding?
We have about 250 right now, and we're looking for another, is it 500? Yeah, that's what I thought. So we have 250 of our own, 250 grant, hopefully for about $1 million project. So. All right, library budget's on page 40. That one, there's not a lot of change, no personnel changes, hours, anything at this point. The court is on page 46. So, and that's probably, I'm remiss in welcoming some staff members that have been here for the first time. Jillian from the court, Brandon from Parks and Rec, and our new city attorney, Mr. Tubby is here. But you know, court's been struggling staffing wise for a few years, and so we're glad to be fully staffed and really starting to get a handle on operations, and I think we have a good plan moving forward. And they will be moving into the new city hall building as we make that transition.
As far as fully staffed go, we still don't have a city prosecutor.
Well, we do. Mr. Meerdink has rescinded his resignation. The personal challenges he was having, the things that he was concerned about, he feels like he's got those resolved and is willing to continue forward. So, and we've committed on the city side to do some things. Mr. Tubby has a lot of prosecution experience that he can help mentor him a little bit and do some things that he's willing to commit to an additional contract. So.
As far as being fully staffed, what does that mean?
Okay, so we have a court administrator and 2 clerks, and then we have contract prosecutor, contract public defender, and our elected municipal judge. Those are all the costs that would be reflected in that budget.
Is he staying on then? Is Meerdink staying on at the same rate that he was before?
Yes. All right, so now the street fund is page 57 in your book. And again, this is one where we have revenues that are targeted specifically for this. These dollars come out of the state highway fund. They're restricted to be used primarily in the right-of-way. There's a little bit of dedication of these to trail projects, but that's where these are. So in this budget, we've went conservative on our revenue estimates because of the rising gas prices. So we're very conservative. Now the capital improvement plan on this in this department is on page 93. And we have 2 projects primarily that we're working on. We're still trying to finalize a design on Garrett Harper, our fight with the railroad, and then working with some adjoining property owners on property acquisition, trying to get that worked out. I think we see a path to the end now, but it's still a little bit of a challenge in that design. I know it's been on the table for a long time. We're trying to get that completed. Then North First Place. Is there a question? I'm
I
sorry.
did have a question on the leased vehicles. Is that still our best option? Is that working out well? How's that going?
So far, yes, it's still our best option. It's working well. We've had to adjust kind of our plan a little bit. One, it wouldn't matter if we were leasing or buying, we can't get new vehicles. So, but we feel like that going through the leasing program gives us a better than average shot at getting on the list to get those vehicles. But it's still, I think we're still planning to buy out some of those as we get to the end of the leases, and that's still going to be a positive thing for us. And that we won't just keep them for 3 years or 5 years, but they'll be longer term, but gives us a way to acquire them at a lower pace. All right, North First Place.
I just had a question on the, go ahead and finish what you're talking about. I have a question on the funding for that department.
Okay. So North First Place, I spoke to the Rotary Club today, and I told them don't drive on North First Place for the next 2 years.
Never mind.
Yeah. But so not the street fund piece of that will be the kind of the capstone. It's going to look nice and really good after we get done. But for a couple years, it's going to be torn up. And I shared this story. I'm not sure if I've told the council this story or not, but maybe, did you talk to him about it, Mark? I can't remember. Anyway, so one of the first projects is to bypass a lift station that's currently in 395. It needs to be updated, and the problem is, we found a way to reroute the sewer line and save money on the project, and then also long-term maintenance costs. Well, we got a contractor all lined up. He's boring under the railroad line, and all of a sudden hits something solid. Not expecting that, so plays around with it a little bit, pulls the bit out, and it has metal shavings on the bit. So since we have to pay 3 railroad guys to watch us work on the railroad or around it.
Can I sign up for that?
Yeah, we pay them a lot of money too. It's $4,500 a day for those 3 gentlemen to be there. So they said, and they don't know this for sure, but they said common practice when they wanted to raise a rail bed up was to take a car, drop it over on its side, and fill it up with dirt. And so we think that's what they ran into, is a railroad car. So we had to demobilize the contractor because they couldn't get the right size bit to be there at that time. So that project shifted to the fall, and then that's going to really kind of shift into the lift station on North First Place, and then next project after that will be a water line replacement, and then we'll replace the street. And so for the next 2 years, but this piece of it, the North First Place, is an earmark that we got in the state transportation bill about, I guess it's 5 years ago now. So we have a good chunk of money to do the street portion, and then the utilities. These are all facilities that needed to be upgraded and maintained, and so this was a good time to do it, so we didn't have to come back in a couple years and cut up a street. So, Mayor, did you want to?
Just on the state street funds, I know part of that bill too was to increase the percentage of tax or whatever on gas.
Yeah.
And so during COVID, we kind of pared that back because there was less transportation or less driving. Did we find that to be accurate, and is the number increasing as far as the revenue that we're getting to cities for street repairs through that?
So we did see just a slight dip, but then it seemed to come back fairly strong. And we are seeing increases, but like I said, we're trying to be a little bit conservative because we don't know what the driving habits are going to be this summer, particularly. but we've seen some steady growth in that revenue source.
I think you also said something about what's going to happen with that street as far as sidewalk and things like that. It's going to be improved. Just
Right.
More than just 2 lanes or.
Right, so there will be a sidewalk on the west side and a trail, a separated trail or path along the east side. And so it's going to be a really nice addition to the area there.
And what are we doing for all the businesses that are there? Can't drive on the street.
We're gonna, it will I mean, we don't really know until we get a contractor for each of those projects exactly what their plan is, but the idea is to keep it open as much as possible, 1 lane, or, you know, they'll have to have flaggers. We don't know exactly. Each contractor is gonna have a different game plan, but we will communicate with the businesses. We will do everything we can to keep access as open as possible. But it will be difficult for a time on each project. It won't be straight through, but it'll be on each project, it'll be difficult, so. And we've already been, you know, talking to businesses, making sure they know what's going on, but it's just gonna be tough for a little bit. All right, the utility fund. This one is starts on page 67. Now, our utility fund includes both water and wastewater within it, so you can see the different revenues. On the recycled or wastewater side, we're proposing 1 new position. As we have continually increased the number of the miles of line that they're maintaining. We've increased the complexity of the plant, so getting another person on board to kind of help. You know, we've even seen a little bit of that burnout in both wastewater and water. You know, each department has somebody on call every weekend, just all those types of things. So adding a new position will hopefully help them with that. So here's a couple of those projects I mentioned earlier. You have a lift number 3, taking that out. That's the one that's in 395. Lift number 6, reconstruction. And then the next project that we'll see in this budget year will be at Elm and 395. And that is, you know, it's going to be a busy intersection, so it's going to interrupt traffic. But we're hoping to minimize that. We've been, one of the slowdowns on this project, we've been acquiring an easement there where the Sherwin-Williams store is, so that we can run parallel to the highway there instead of being in the road, some things like that. So we're trying to minimize our impact, but it will be, there's some, you know, I think you guys, the council saw pictures of when we did Cameron, a lot of the sewer lines, and there was some big holes in this particular stretch. So this will be a good thing for lots of reasons. So,
Byron, as we continue to grow, at some point, I would imagine our treatment facility is going to be outgrown. What's the time frame on that? We need to be looking at adding.
Yeah, so we just probably 5 years ago made a big upgrade to this treatment system and bought a number of years before we need that. I don't know, would you say 10 or 15, Mark?
I don't like thinking about it in terms of years. I like thinking about it in terms of capacity, and right now we're at about 45% capacity.
Okay.
So that's quite a number of years if you want to look at it like that.
Okay.
I remember talking not too long ago about how some of the filters, though, are past their useful life, and we're just kind of making do with what's there, or we're keeping them working.
Right. So we went to what's called a membrane filtration system, and they tell you when the engineers tell you it'll last 10 years before you need to replace the membranes. But there's also a maintenance schedule that you go through, and you can test it. And Bill actually led a tour when we had the LOC here, and I think we're at 1/10 or 1/20th of on the scale of where they say you have to replace it. So even though they've said it only lasts 10 years, we feel we've been able to maintain it and keep it in good function, and it's still functioning at 1/20th of the maximum capacity. Any other questions?
I got one, Byron.
Okay.
It's more of a technical question. It wasn't really on the recycled water fund. So as I'm looking at the line items, I'm seeing the connection, but I just kind of want someone to maybe educate me on this, where on the line items, let's just say salary and wages, it says like 1,100, and then there's another salary and wages with a different number right next to it.
Where you at?
Are you on page 68?
So if I'm looking at 68, it's personnel services, the salary and wages. So there's two of them, but the numbers are different, and you can see how like some of the years are, two of the years are filled in, and then with the other salary and wages. So if you're looking at the first one, the 2019 to 2020, the 2020 to 2021 actuals are 0, but then they have more on top. And the one right directly below it, it does have numbers for those. I guess
Yeah,
I'm just
so I'm
curious
gonna ask
about that.
Tasha, she's got the answer for this.
Yeah, so OpenGov is, we're still kind of in a transition. It was, the way, we use what's called a workforce plan, so it's a way to bring in all of our employees and get it all set up, and they needed an actual special code that ties in, which is where that 1,100 comes in. That's salaries and wages. It's the last 4 digits for every salary and wages across the city.
Okay.
So we needed a way to pull all of that into one setting, but still have separate funds later. And so what that is, a budget only account, the 1,100, the 1,300, those are budget only accounts and no actuals hit them. So the other accounts you're seeing are our actual expense accounts, and that's why you're gonna see 2 different sets. My goal is to clear that up very shortly, but it's been a transition because we have to manually go change those numbers if we want them all to be on the same lines. And it hasn't been a smooth process yet, but we're working on it. So when you see that, they are technically the same account.
Yeah.
It's just one is a budget purpose account and one is the actual.
So on the past years, we had the actual accounts that we use, and then the projections are on the other accounts.
Geez, accounting's complicated. No, I
Yeah.
I just figured, I was like, I know that's just more.
No,
of an
that's a great
accounting
question.
thing, so
I
I was just like,
appreciate
I don't know what that means, but
Yeah. Thanks.
No,
thank you.
I
Thank you.
noticed it too and was like, this looks a little
Do
wonky.
we have other occurrences of that throughout this budget? 'Cause
Yeah.
I saw it a lot of
Right,
places.
and it's so we're transitioning to a system we call OpenGov that sits on top of our normal accounting system that allows us to better analyze data. But again, it has some quirks in it that we're trying to work through, and so that's why it ended up in this year's budget.
So all my markups are, forget them.
All right. If that's what all you marked up, we're good.
No, it wasn't.
All right. So now the water fund, it's in that same utility fund area, page 70. This one, pretty normal operations. We have a couple of projects in the capital improvement side of this, which is on page 96. Well, number 6 backup generator, that was a project from last budget. We are waiting for the generator to show up. And so that is going to carry into next year from an expense standpoint. We have some other future projects that we're working on, a couple of them in the downtown area, Gladys and Main Street, on some upgrades on the water lines there. And then this kind of affects this fund, but it also affects what we call our regional water fund. Because of the shutdown or the closing of Shears, which was our only potable water customer in the regional water system, the city is set up to take potable water from, it's a backup source from our normal sources. So because we don't know exactly how we're going to need to manage that treatment system that we have at the regional plant, if we can mothball it and it's still going to be okay, or if we need to operate it a little bit at a time. Anyway, we budgeted some money from this fund to buy it from the regional water fund, just in case we need to do that to keep the system operating properly.
Like, saw in there that there were gonna be some expansions to the regional water fund for some big water purchases. Are any of those doing?
None of those are potable. They're all on the non-potable water side. So Hermiston Energy Services is on page 73. Right now, no major changes in the operations side, but with the rate increases that the council has approved recently, we're back to where we can start taking care of some major maintenance issues that we have that we've kind of had originally put on the back burner, but now we have the revenue to start addressing those. Some of those are some underground wire that is causing a lot of problems, and some backyard wire connections that are causing some problems. So,
in general, is this a losing proposition?
HES?
Yeah.
No. I think we're covering our costs, and right now I think we're back at a place where our rates are where we can start doing what we need to do. The amount of that when we took over the system 20 years ago, there was a backlog of maintenance from Pacific Power.
Sure.
And so we're getting to the end of that, but we're still addressing some of those challenges. But we feel like we can continue to operate it. We're still, I don't know, about 30% less than Pacific Power on rates. So we're still a good value for our residents, our customers.
There's 10,000 in the energy fund resources, $10,000 a year is interest on investments. What are we investing in, and what's that money? What are we doing with that money?
So, every fund has its own reserve requirements, fund balance requirements. The general fund has one, HES has one as well, and so that's probably a little bit generous on the amount of interest we would get on that. But that's what it is. That we, by policy, have said we're going to keep 45 days worth of expenses on hand in case something goes wrong.
45 days of operating expenses.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you're putting that money in the bank. Is that what you're asking? You're putting the money in the bank to get interest on it? Or
Well, we have an investment portfolio, and it's part of that. We don't necessarily segment, but when we get interest, we allocate it to the funds. Okay. All right, the regional water system. Just as a little bit of background, the regional water system is a partnership with the Port of Umatilla. Together, the city and the port built this in the mid-90s, and it was mostly built to supply power plants, the 2 power plants that are built and 1 anticipated. And so they have been our long-term customers. There's 2, Hermiston Generating and Calpine, both are non-potable water customers. We also still sell water to Simplot, who was they were one of the original partners, private partners in that project. But I don't know, 3-4 years ago is when we added our first new customer in probably 20 years, and that was Amazon Web Services. And we currently supply 2 locations of 2 data center campuses. Both of them are not located in the city. One is located in Umatilla, the other is out at the 82-84 interchange area. But they are gearing up to expand the system, their data center system, within kind of the footprint of the regional water system. So we will be working with them to expand the regional system. Now they will pay all the cost of expansion. They'll pay for all the new lines, they'll pay the engineering. And in fact, we have in front of the council on Monday a contract approval so we can move forward on engineering some of that. But that's the kind of the status of this system. It's the The non-potable water side is functioning very well. It's the potable water system that's a little challenged right now with no customers, and just wanted to make sure that we don't do permanent damage to that treatment system. So,
When Amazon is paying for the water system, are they putting in the capacity for fire protection as well?
They take care of the fire system on their campuses, yes.
But how about the water for firefighting?
So it's a couple of different answers. In the city, they will provide for water for firefighting. On their campuses, what they do for their firefighting, as far as I'm aware, is they have a tank that pressurizes a system that then the firefighters can tie into to fight anything that's on their campuses.
So
Because
even though they're putting in water mains, they're not putting in water mains for firefighting?
the regional system is not designed to do any firefighting.
It's potable water, is what you said, right?
No, it's not I mean, it's a mix of potable and non-potable, but it's always been designed not to be, just because of it's just not designed to always be pressurized.
Okay.
And so we've never designed it. If you go out along 11th Street, you'll find some fire hydrants. They're green and black.
Yeah.
And it clearly says on them, this is not for firefighting, it's mostly for us to maintain the system. And so because they're outside, they take care of that in a different way. Okay, EOTech, it's on page 83. This is what I'm calling a placeholder budget. We're coming up to the end of a 5-year contract with our current operator out here at EOTech. And we're going to have a discussion on Monday night with the city council about the possibility of canceling or doing something different on that contract. And so, because of the unknown, what we've done is just basically we've plugged what we've done in the past recent years. And if the council directs us to cancel that contract or do something different, we will come forward with a specific supplemental budget that will show a new plan or a different plan for EOTech. All right, one of the questions that I anticipated would be related to ARPA, the federal dollars that we have collected and we're anticipating collecting. And what we have budgeted to expend some of those in this fiscal year. But again, the kind of strategy that the council we've been working on is to try to use that as matching funds. And the infrastructure dollars, the programs are just starting to come out and allow us to make applications, and so we're still working for that. Towards that, we've always had a policy that we don't budget for money that we hope we get, and so we haven't budgeted for any of those grants, but we are pursuing those with the plan to use some of those ARPA dollars as matching. There are a few other smaller projects that we've been working on to use those for, but I just wanted to mention that because I know that's often, people think that there's just grants all over the place, but we're still working on them. So,
how much do you think you may get? What are you looking at? How much, if you would throw a guess out there?
Well, I hope we could get $2 to $3 million. That we have a road project that we pretty comfortable, we think we can get some money, but and that's about $1.5 million. And then there's some cybersecurity dollars we're looking at, some different things. So,
But so far, we've gotten nothing.
not out of any of the money that fell from the sky.
Right, okay.
So the second half of that ARPA grant, we got the first half.
Right, we have the
haven't
first-
got the second half.
That's correct.
Okay, and so that's not included anywhere in the budget.
Well, the revenue is, but not the expending of it.
So you're holding the revenue in contingency, or what are you doing with it?
Yes, we're holding
How
it,
much is that?
anticipating. So it's a total of, is it 3 total?
3.8.
1.9 and 1.9?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we're anticipating. And we've got the first 1.9, waiting for the second.
And we have till 2026 to spend it.
Yes.
2027?
2026 to spend it, we have to obligate it by 2024.
Yeah.
The accountants back there are making sure I stay on this.
I filed the reports in my name.
Who administers those funds? Is it through the state or the federal?
No, actually, we're grateful they come straight from the federal government to us. And so it is a little bit of work where we have to report, but we don't have to beg the state for it. Yes.
In the EOTech budget, I want to back up just a second.
Okay.
I don't see any funding for capital projects on this site. Is that in the EOTech budget, or where is that being allocated?
Yeah, I did not point that out. It's in the reserve fund. If you take a look at page 99. There's 540,000 that's budgeted for a project. And again, we haven't decided that project. That's something that we'll be talking about when Al comes to talk with the council.
There's no additional like contingency or reserve fund at EOTech?
That's what we have.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. If you haven't asked as the questions have come along, let's open it up.
Byron?
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to the court.
Okay.
So you mentioned the salaries for the prosecution of public defense.
What page, Josh?
Can you tell me?
Page 48.
Okay.
Do they get paid a set amount under contract, or do they only get paid when they show up and work cases?
They get paid a set amount. They have a monthly, basically a monthly retainer.
So my question, and this is not just you, but probably the council as a citizen member of this committee, are we really getting the best bang for our buck when it comes to running misdemeanor cases through the municipal court? We're looking at 135 actual, budgeted $160,000 annually just for those two line items, when we could be running those cases through the circuit court. You know, the municipal court can still do traffic cases and violation stuff at a much lower rate. Just a question, and this is no mark against the people of the court. I want to make sure, because I know there's people who work for the court here. This is just strictly a dollars and cents thing. I mean, I question as to whether or not that is something that is worth the taxpayer dollars when we can do it differently and get the same result.
Well, I think the way I would argue, I mean, I think it's something we always ought to look at. But what I would argue is we're not going to get the same result if we turn those cases to the circuit court. I think things won't. We did an analysis, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. It takes a DUI case 270 days to get through the circuit court system. We can have it done in 90 days.
But we're getting it done in 90 days at the cost of how much city taxpayer money, when it still hold those people accountable. Yes, it would take longer, but it would still hold those people accountable over time, and yet we could save the city funding on that.
So looking at it from the social model, during that time period when that person has that, they're kind of in limbo there. What are they not able to do? They might not be able to work. Therefore, they're not making taxpayer dollars. They're, much of their, if your life is in limbo because you're not able to move forward, then you are not being as productive. Therefore, if the system is moving more slowly, then people and their lives are moving more slowly, and we have a less productive society. So by having the system move more smoothly, we're going to cut down on the mental health pressures. We're going to have people returning to work more quickly. We're going to free up our law officers to get back to what they're doing, because things are going to be moving much more quickly through the system. I think it probably cuts down on paperwork quite a bit. And then also the larger courts can take care of the larger cases without being taking care of the things that we can take care of in-house.
How much more revenue does it generate to have those cases in our court? I mean, there's fines, we get to collect some of the attorney fees for having those cases here too, so I mean.
I would like to see the numbers. I would be hesitant to think that that's going to offset. The fines that we collect are never going to pay for adjudicating cases. I mean, holding people accountable for adjudicating cases is a costly business. It just is. And it's whether we want to bear that burden and that cost, or we allow the state to bear that cost for us. I get and I respect what you're saying. Having worked for the city and also now with the county and dealt with both courts, the municipal and the state courts, I can tell you from my perception anyway, there really isn't a huge difference in the outcome. Aside from, like you said, the pressures on the people who've gotten themselves in this situation. Certainly we don't want to be unfair to those people, but I put it out there as for consideration that I think it really needs to be looked at as to whether or not the money that we're spending to handle cases is really the best use of our city's resources when we could use that. Just those two line items, 160,000 pays for one FTE. That's another police officer. That's a couple more people at the city hall, or wherever that needs to go. Can we utilize those funds in a more productive way?
Josh, it's a great question. It's one that we wrestle with all the time. It's a public service that we provide to our community, and it's a service that it's part of that local control issue and helping to manage our constituents, and turning it over to another agency just creates a loss of that control. And so that's the conversation that we have all the time about prosecution and what's in the best interest of our families and friends. There is a cost to it. It's also a burden that we would place on another department that's probably overburdened already as well. Right. And so when we have those conversations with our partner agencies, that's always brought up. We don't have the staffing to handle this already. How are we going to handle all of your misdemeanors and stuff too? Not that that's our responsibility. We could just say, but at some point it is our population, and so we're taking ownership for that. And so there's some social, like Nancy said, responsibility that we kind of play into that a little. But it's definitely something that you always got to look at and keep in mind. It'll be interesting to see, as Rich and Jillian get some more experience in the community, what their feelings are when our system functions at a higher level, because it just isn't functioning well right now. And so I look forward to another year or two of experience of that to see if it's a value. Because we've talked about bringing the DUIs back on. We kicked those down the road for a while, and now talking about that, bringing those back in-house. And so there's some value there potentially. But it's a challenge, because you look at all of these services that we provide. They're all lost money, revenue. And so at this point, I think the conversation is we feel like, as a responsibility to our neighbors, we should be trying to manage that the best we can locally. and trying not to drop that burden on some other agency. And so maybe Jillian and Rich have comments about that or thoughts. But we just need some more time.
Time?
Yeah, I mean, time just kind of to get things back to where they would be. And having worked in circuit court for the last 4.5 years, now coming to municipal court, the one thing I appreciate about municipal court is when defendants come before the municipal court judge, they aren't just a case number, they are a name. And he knows them, he knows what's going on in their life, and he has the ability to kind of customize the sentence to fit that individual. And you don't see that in circuit court. It's wham bam, getting them through as fast as possible. And I think that's a huge benefit to our community, to be able to work with these individuals that maybe can't pay the fine, so they're willing to do community service work. And so they are giving back to the community that way. Just kind of working through that process. So that is a goal of mine. I understand it's not super revenue generating, but it is a benefit for our community.
Okay.
It's a livability generating aspect that we've made, and that in the long run will create fiscal opportunities because people will understand that this is a community that takes care of the community, and that again it will free up the other courts to get their job done.
So I look at it just from one of the perspectives I look at it from is who is actually being ran through the court. We all know that the city is this big, and yet the population we serve is this big, and so if a lot of people that are coming into town and committing crime are costing the city money, but they're county residents, then that maybe should be passed on to the county. So again, I'm not bringing it up to knock on the court at all. It's just about dollars and cents and raising the questions. And I appreciate everybody listening and having this conversation. I hope it continues. Whatever the council decides is what the council decides. I can respect that, but you guys brought me here to bring stuff up.
No.
I appreciate it.
We need
the
more
question.
conversations like that.
Yeah.
I appreciate feedback and input and looking so deeply at the issues, because you're right, it's always a balance of where we're spending our resources the best for the best bang for the buck for the community that we're serving. And so is this a service that we feel value in? And it's something we always got to continue to ask. So appreciate it.
Well, the one thing that I'll commit to do is that we'll keep that question in mind as we go through this next year and put some thought into how we can show that value. I mean, I anticipate during this budget year that we might be bringing those A misdemeanors back in, and then maybe we can see a little bit different revenue picture and things like that. But yeah, we always need to keep thinking about it.
It'd be interesting to know what percentage of the court is really from the community and what is from the outside community. So why don't you start tracking that, figure it out. You probably do anyway, but it'd be nice to say, yeah, we've got X amount, or we're taking care of a lot of people outside of our community.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Here was a question, here was how it was answered, here's the data. Transparency is always been very important to us. So thank you for bringing up the question. Definitely listen.
All right. Other questions?
I have a question on the budget itself. I've never seen a municipal budget that has a contingency factor of 23%. Can you kind of explain that to me a little bit, or did I read that wrong? Or if you look at your contingency versus your $65 million plus budget, your contingency is about 16.9 or 7.
If you're going across all funds,
I am.
I mean, that's where that 08 fund, the reserve fund, comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, under Oregon budget law, we're allowed to put some money away for projects coming in the future.
Right.
So, for example, in the recycled water department in particular, those membrane cassettes that we were talking about, we're taking $100,000 a year to put away for those, because the estimate when we started, it was $1 million. So 10 years, let's make sure we have $1 million when that comes. And so with those, particularly the utility and those funds, that's what we've been working to do, is to get ahead of some of those longer term
Is it then
costs.
labeled correctly as a contingency versus a capital project that is?
Well, that's the, you know, under the Oregon nomenclature that we have to use, that's the right word. There's another word that they call reserve for future expenditure, then which is, we don't think we're gonna spend it. And so we've chosen to put more of our funds into contingency rather than that reserve for future expenditure. Because in the reserve for future expenditure, if we have an emergency, it's almost impossible to get it.
Yeah.
And
But
so,
to me, it throws off what you're saying in your budget, because you've got this huge contingency chunk of money. How much does it cost to really run the city? What's the number? Is it 65 million, or is it 65 less 20 million?
well, I mean,
That's what your contingency is.
the reserve fund, you have to look at the number.
I think it came out at 16.
It's about 15.5 million, so.
Depends where you look at the thing. It goes anywhere from 16.4 to 15.5 to 16.9 within this budget.
So,
Let's go on 15.
so 15 of that, we're planning for future projects. And
But it's not really this year's budget, right?
no, but that's another requirement of Oregon. We have to account for, we have to somehow account for the expense and the revenue on both of those, on both of those. So you're right, it inflates what our budget looks like.
You really can run this city for about 45 million.
That's what our operational budget would be more like, yes.
And that's what maybe we should tell some people. And saying, we don't have a $65 million budget, we have a $45 million budget, or 50, whatever it may be. But that would be what I would look for in looking at a budget, is saying, how much does it cost to run the business? You know, and it's not 65 million. So that's the first question. The second thing that I had a difficult time with, in terms of the layout of the budget, you usually have a difference of what you have estimated it as, and then actually have the calculation done. So anybody looking at your budget can look it down and say, you're $500,000 here or $1 million over here. What I had to do was go through and look back and forth and add and subtract to figure out, because you're way off, we are way off on some of the things we thought were going to happen. They're, you know, either over or under dramatically. And I think it'd be easier for maybe for the council to just look at a budget and say, okay, we're off here, or we didn't budget right over here, because some of these numbers are $1 million off.
Well, and that's, you know, I don't know which item you're looking at in particular, but sometimes it's like that project, right? We thought we were gonna build a street, and there were things that came up that we weren't able to, and
Well,
so.
one of them is your, one of them is one of the areas that you've set aside for development. We thought we were gonna get X $1 million in, and we were off $1 million on what the revenue was on that.
Mhm.
So those are kind of the explanations that I think the budget committee should say, why are we off $1 million? What happened? And that's what I'd be looking for.
Well, I mean, we can take that and see if we can rework and look at.
It's just something I'm looking at going forward to make it
Sure.
easier for any of us who are looking at budgets, especially for the city council, if they're gonna run a budget, to be able to look down and go, okay, here's what's really happening. We budgeted this, we missed it by that. There should be an explanation. Oh, project didn't come in. We didn't hire a person. We hired 2 more people, whatever it may be. So it's easier for all of us to follow.
Yeah, and I feel like we do that more on a monthly basis when we're doing our operational reporting and so forth, but we can think about how we might be able to implement that into the annual budgeting picture. Thank you.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
I will say too, what we're planning to launch here in the near future is the OpenGov transparency platform, where any citizen can go in and look at those numbers, and you can see 6 years of historical data compared to budgeted. And you could actually go pull that up at any time and look at that and compare it yourself and kind of see, okay, where does this fall and how does it look? So we are heading towards that so that anybody can do it, not just counselors, but citizens. We want to take a look and say, how did this shake out? So we agree with you and are definitely heading there. And it will be live here pretty shortly.
Yeah, historicals are great, but I'm really looking at, are we doing a good job of budgeting
Right, and
this year? You know, 1 year historical is always great, 2 years is great, but, you know, when you look at a budget that we've already put together for last year and we're off substantial amounts in different categories, there's got to be a reason.
Yeah, and it'll have the budgeted figures in there too, so you can see.
Right, so it would have the variance as well?
Yes.
I think so, yes, that is the plan.
That'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
Any other questions, thoughts?
Nice job overall, I thought it was very well done.
And from a counselor perspective, when we see these each month and we're able to see, okay, well, this material didn't come in, and so here's where, and so that's why our perspective is slightly different, because we see it happen in real time. So it's kind of like, you know, we're kind of reading the final chapter, but, and it's kind of hard to tell what the rest of the book looked like, and it's a lot to settle down with and try and figure out, okay, what happened with the rest of the story and where did all the pieces go, just by looking at this at first. And so I agree that it's a little, and having all the backstory in one place would be really helpful. But coming into council meetings, which is why it's like, yeah, they're on Zoom and they're on YouTube and all that other stuff, and all of the meetings and all of the notes and everything are on there. And you know, Mark is always, you know, he's up there ready to stand for questions anytime we need them. He's very good at that. So, you know, I really appreciate you bringing your thoughts, and also that, you know, as we go through every month and we hear about these variances and, you know, why a certain, you know, product didn't come in, finding out about the rail car and that kind of thing. You know, we're finding out about these things as they go, and so we get to the end of the year and we find out, okay, because of all of those things, it was off by this amount, and it all added up because of those things over the year. But it's a lot of little pieces that went into that. So that's.
The other side of the
Yeah.
coin is transparency. As an elected official, you're supposed to be transparent to your constituents. And that's, if someone wants to read, really want to understand how you're spending their money, we've got to be able to communicate the best way we can on that transparency factor.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why what she was saying is going to go a long way towards helping out with that. And that's why also we're always, you know, here, and as I said, when it comes to the council meetings, but that's why we really, really want the public to come to those and ask questions.
And you know as well as I do, they don't.
Well, yeah, we even have it up through Zoom, and it's like, hey, you know, just type in and say hi. I mean, like from the comfort of your couch, right there on, you know, just, we're right there.
I can definitely see what he's saying. It'd be nice to have them in this packet so that you can
do
compare
a couple
them.
little pie graphs too, because I love charts. But
Pie charts are pie charts, but actual numbers of what you really thought you were going to spend versus what you really did spend, and what's the explanation of why you didn't spend it. You don't have to have the explanation, but at least someone could look at in a meeting like this as a budget committee member, you would find out what happened. And so you know, that's what the budget committee is for. I would think that, you know, if they don't know about it, they should at least ask the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So appreciate that.
You know, I know, David, this is your first experience, and Philip, your second. You know, I've been at this for 10 years, and Jackie and Rod have been doing it much longer. This is way more readable than when I first came in here.
Oh, boy.
And so, you know, looking at these budgets, and I even complimented the business department and the city manager on its presentation. It's getting more layperson-like. They used to be so much more complicated that, you know, nobody knew what questions to ask, and so now we're getting great questions, and we're trying to produce a better product that's more layperson readable, so the average person could look at a document like this, or go online and look at the information and try and find out where we're spending the resources. We're trying to be as transparent as possible with the information we have, and that's been a process that we've worked hard on in the last 10 years, so.
Budget committee meetings used to go for 4 to 5 hours, sometimes 3 to 4 different meetings.
Yeah.
And over the course of time, and that was the reason. Because we had to ask those questions, because you couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Been fine.
And you have to know in order to make a informed decision. Well, as time has gone on, and I can tell you this is light years better, although can always use it.
Well, and we're always looking for, I mean, that's
Right.
why I say we'll see what we can do to try to make it better. I mean, that's why we're hearing the feedback and we'll do what we can to try to make it better.
Well, I thought it was an excellent presentation, but I just want to say, we can always make it better, but make it easier, at least on a number of things that are pretty easy to do when you have the software capability that we now have.
Yeah.
Speaking of making it better, and I just wanted to give a shout out, one of the things I noticed that I forgot to mention was in the police department's budget. I saw they got a $12,000 increase in their training line item, and I brought that up, I think, last year at the committee meeting, so I appreciated seeing that, that feedback was taken to heart. So.
We did it just for you, Josh.
I know. I know you did, but
We secretly named it after you too, but we're
hey,
just,
it's all
that,
good.
that's
Sometimes,
like,
I'll be honest, sometimes I've come to these and I feel like it's just a rubber stamp. And the fact that whether or not it was because of my feedback, I don't know. I'm not going to claim credit for it, but it was put out there and it was looked at to some level. I just appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate those of you that are willing to speak up and ask questions and engage in the process and help us to improve this, because it really is all of our budget. So, if we can make it better for everybody, that's what our goal is. So thanks for asking this question.
there are no rubber stamps. Do you know what the price of rubber is these days? I think it's like on page 90 in there. Yeah, no.
Okay. It's that time, and I do appreciate your presentation, keeping it concise and to the point and timely. Because I remember sitting here till 11 o'clock at night and trying to stay awake and still not get to this point. So,
Back to next time.
isn't that right?
Yes.
Yes, it is. So it's time to move forward and vote on the proposed budget as presented. Didn't come across any mistakes and or anything, so I would entertain a motion to accept the budget as proposed.
So we need to do, hold on a second, we've got to do this tax levy in this kind of specific way, approve the tax levy.
Okay, all right.
That's what we're.
Okay. Backing up.
Sorry.
I only do this once a year.
I know, that's why.
Yeah. So the tax levy at the tax rate, which is locked in by state law, by voter approval, at 6.086 per thousand. Motion to approve it, the tax rate.
Can I just ask a question? If it's locked in by state law, why do we go ahead and approve it?
Because that's
State
what
law.
the state budget law says to do.
I mean, you do not have to
Law.
ask for that much money.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Some
can go
cities
under
could
it.
say, I only want to do $6 per thousand. We don't need it all. There are some cities that don't need the full revenue amount, but by measure 50,
Yeah.
that's the number.
This
that
is the max number.
we could max out.
Right.
So that's why it has to be approved, because if we want to go for the max, then we have to state the max. So there's need for motion?
Yes.
I'll motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. And the bonded debt, which is $317,400. Can you explain that just a little bit to
Yeah,
those
so-
that may not know?
So the debt there, we have some debt that is guaranteed by property taxes. And so
we only levy what we need to pay that debt. And this is over and above the $6.86 or 0.086 cents. But this is the amount to pay that debt.
And is that just the debt payments for the year then?
Yes.
So I would request a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now, I would entertain a motion to approve the budget as proposed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Oh, yes.
Can you put the amount in the budget in the approval? Or do you have a resolution, or what do you have to do?
In the actual resolution the council does, it will have the total amount.
Yes. Yes. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, on the same sign. Okay. And with that, we are adjourned.
All right. So don't go anywhere yet. We're gonna reconvene the Hermiston Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting. And so I'm going to open that meeting up really quick because we have two different agencies that we're doing budgets for tonight. One is the Hermiston, City of Hermiston, and one is the Urban Renewal Agency. And you are all part of the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee as well. We also need to elect a chairperson for this committee.
I know that Brian, I would be chair.
It's been moved by Mr. Hardin, seconded by Mr. Hanson, that Brian Meisner assumes the Hermiston Urban Renewal Agency chairperson position. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations.
Thank you. And I will also entertain a motion to select a secretary for the Hermiston Urban Renewal Agency Committee.
If he stepped out of the room, can we still know?
Sure.
Yes, yes, you can.
Yeah.
I know.
How it's often done.
Mr.
Yeah.
Wallace wanted
No
to-
one
wants to
leave.
do it.
I'll second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
He's not here.
All right. Sir, you're on.
Okay, I want to do the budget message for the Downtown Urban Renewal District. It's a very small budget that we do each year. The Urban Renewal Agency itself operates as a separate entity from the City of Hermiston. It's a small taxing district within basically the downtown. And our Downtown Urban Renewal District proposes a budget of $645,662 for the 22-23 fiscal year. For those of you who are new and for everyone else who isn't up to speed on how Urban Renewal District works, here's just a quick refresher. When a district is formed, the tax assessment in that district area is frozen at the values that we set at that time. So in this case, the downtown area had a value of $42 million in 2013 when the district was formed. Any revenue going to the Urban Renewal District is the revenue above that $42 million. So the $42 million assessed value generates revenue to all of the existing taxing districts, City of Hermiston, Umatilla County School District, all of those. They continue receiving their revenue off of that $42 million tax base. The assessed value within the district itself has increased by $15 million over the last 9 years. So that $15 million provides the tax base for the Urban Renewal District. For 22-23, that's anticipated to generate $270,259. So you might be saying, well, if we're getting $270,000 in tax revenue, why do we have a budget of $645,000? We're very conservative in how we budget, and we don't want to have to finance any more than we have to, so we have been building cash reserves. So basically, we ended last year with $400,000 in cash on hand. We're adding 270 to it, and that's where you get our $645,000 revenue now. We just have a few programs that we're going to be proposing. We're proposing to continue our $50,000 allocation for the facade grant program. That is a downtown improvement that any business can take advantage of to improve the exterior of the building. Since the beginning of the program, we have approved 20 facade grants. I just did a real quick shot just of one so that you could see how things have changed. But we're also proposing a new large capital project, and one that's been on our radar since the Urban Renewal District was formed, and that's the Southeast 2nd Street Gateway project. It's one of the projects that has been a priority since the beginning. It serves really two purposes. This is a realignment of the intersection of Southeast 2nd Street, Highway 395. And first idea is to create a real sense of place, a real entrance to the downtown area. But the second is safety improvements. That is a very off-angle intersection. Left turning movements are very dangerous. So this has always been on our radar just as an overall safety improvement as well as a visual improvement. Some basic feel for how this would look. This would be if you were driving north right before you get to the community center. The drive will re-angle so that it's a right angle coming into Highway 395. Kind of getting a feel for it.
It won't work on the screen. The red light. Sorry.
Wow.
Green won't show.
Closing entirely the community center access that is right at this blind corner. Eliminating that becomes a right-in entrance, and then you can go into the community center or continue on to Domino's or other units. But that's the important thing. This becomes a one-way in.
Papa Murphy's.
So now left turn movements would get channeled up to Newport here. And that is intended to make it much safer.
So that's a one-way entrance.
That one-way entrance.
So if you want to turn off where do you go? There's just a one-way, it's only just a one-way. It's not open.
It's a one-way in.
Okay.
Yeah.
That other lane, what is that other lane showing?
This is still two ways
Oh,
here.
to get into the community center.
Right.
So if you're coming to the community center, there's a stop bar right here so that you don't hit anybody coming this way.
Sign that says, oh, do not enter.
Yeah.
It's burnt down for the time, but it's, yeah, look at what.
Can't we just put like a roundabout there to irritate people? Oh, we're on film.
So at this point, a lot of the preliminary work for this has been done. Our engineering firm has about 50% design drawings. We've done all of the landscape design as part of our Festival Street project. This was actually one of the ideas in the Festival Street as the whole thing phases out. And then the signage has also already been designed for how we might do a pedestal through our wayfinding sign project. So we're really just right there and ready to move forward with this if the budget committee agrees. Proposed budget for this is $400,000. The at-grade concrete work is about $280,000, and then the remainder would be for landscape improvements. One of the things that's near and dear to our mayor's heart also in the budget is a small increase for the Festival Street. We always budget $3,000 every year for maintenance or programming, bringing in entertainers. In this case, the street is getting pretty dirty from the construction project, so we want to make sure that the contractor can clean it as much as possible, so we're proposing to update the project. And you'll notice that the wayfinding from the previous year, that budget line has been zeroed out. That project will be complete by the end of this year, so we're not allocating anything. We took delivery of the signage on Monday, so now we're just working on getting it on to installation contractor. And then we continue to see the debt service on the Festival Street loan each year. This year, the payment is set at $110,000. That's about it for the Urban Renewal District, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
So the wayfinding project, although we allocated 48,500, there was a lot more we could have allocated. And so, are we planning on that at some other point?
It's going to roll into a general fund project at this point. The signage within the district itself will be complete with the installation of the signage that we have. And so then it'll become city general fund.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I just had a question on the wayfinding sign as well. We talked about it at a council meeting prior for bilingual signage, especially in downtown. Is that still part of the project?
Yeah, and in fact, this is a concept, and the concept had also a Spanish language version. As we get into the design and working, we could even, eliminate the watermelons and switch it so that instead of having the watermelons on one side, it's Spanish. It's still an option. We have all of the design in the plan to accommodate that.
Awesome.
Clint, you had a question from the youth advisor.
Oh, sweet.
You're on.
You raised your hand.
Sorry. I was just curious as to what the middle one was. I thought it said something, so I was struggling with reading it. But then you said that the watermelons, and I was like, oh, that makes more sense. Yeah. A hidden message.
Question about the district itself.
Yeah.
Is this a ongoing forever district, or is it expired?
It expires. We're planning on a 20-year life, and so we're on year 9.
Oh.
Good question. It could be re-upped.
It can be.
So you see some communities that have, their life has expired as far as the term of the zone or the area, and they just re-up it again. So.
Well, I was thinking that, or at some point, it might be once you get to downtown, there may be projects in other areas.
We are looking at another area, doing it. Urban Renewal District or two. Yeah.
The idea behind urban renewal is basically you take an area and identify it as something that needs sprucing up, and as projects are focused in that area, everybody's still getting their tax revenue off that frozen base. You build a bunch of projects in there and the value goes up more than it would have just organically, and then when the district expires, everybody's getting more revenue than they would have if you had never formed the district.
How much in actual facade grants did we grant last year?
We granted 2 and we paid out 1.
And so value-wise, what was that?
10,000.
10,000?
We granted 20, but paid 10.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And have we ever come close to the $50,000?
One year we actually went over. We have the ability to go over the 10,000 maximum when a project is considered exceptionally beneficial to the community as a whole. And so we paid $68,000 just to the hotel as one grant to help them improve their facade. So we have been over the 50,000 before. Great. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Clint. Thank you, Clint. Okay, we entertain a motion to approve the Hermiston Urban Renewal Area budget as proposed.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And we are
good. We're adjourned. So I just want to make sure before everybody leaves, I wanted to introduce our student advisors. They are two students from Hermiston High School that are part of our Hermiston City Council now. They sit up with us at the council chambers and are providing some valuable input from the youth perspective of our community. So these are 2 of our community members, or our youth advisor members, Julissa Gonzalez Mendoza and Manuel Salazar, and they're both sophomores, right, at Hermiston High School. So they were invited to join us this evening to hear this process and hopefully add to the value of their experience with us at the city council. So thanks for coming tonight. And, yeah, we are working on a time thing still. You know, they are sophomores in high school. And, you know, us adults have to show up on time for stuff. So I know you guys are busy. And you took us up on the free meals, so that's good. There's plenty of food out there and cookies. Please take it home with you, because I'm sure the city staff doesn't want it going back to City Hall. Maybe some cookies. Thank you all for
Thank
your
you very much.
participation and appreciate it.
If you don't want the books, you can leave them here and we will.
We repurposed